Have you ever gone to a fast food restaurant and you were just like looking at the menu and you see this huge burger? I mean, it looks massive. It's covering the entire plate. At least that's what it looks like in the picture. Then when you finally get the burger, it's tiny. It can like fit in the palm of your hand, and you're just so disappointed with this burger. And you're like, huh, they're kind of misleading you. Well, it's kind of the same thing with the state of Nebraska. I mean, not the disappointment part, but the misleading part. Sure, Nebraska is huge. It's 77,000 square miles, and it's the 16th largest state in the United States. Not huge, but also kind of packed in a little bit for its weight, too. Now, why am I saying that Nebraska is just so much tinier than it actually looks? I mean, just look at the map. You got the two largest cities, Omaha and Lincoln, both having populations of 500,000 and 300,000 respectively. And then after that, there's a huge drop-off, going down for the third city to have 60,000. And that city is just a suburb of Omaha. The first actual city that's independent is the fourth-ranked city, Grand Island, right about here. That little pocket city right there, having about 50,000. And the rest of Nebraska cities are basically all these pocket cities, either in the easternmost 20% of the state or along the I-80 corridor, right around here. The entire rest of the state is just empty. I mean, you just have to look at it. Sure, there's a couple of pocket cities here and there. Like right here, Scottsbluff, Alliance, and McCook. Other than that, it's just empty. I mean, I don't really have to nail this in. Just nothing but scrubberland. And maybe a little bit of desert, kind of. I mean, it's not was enough to be desert, but kind of looks like deserts. So how did it get to be like this? Why is Nebraska basically just a glorified city-state pretty much, with 60% of its population living in the metropolitan areas of Omaha and Lincoln alone? Again, that's just this tiny little area right here and that tiny area right there. Well, let me explain, and welcome to Crispy Maps. Now let's start with this map of Nebraska showing the annual amount of precipitation. All the way in the east, you got this pink area, which gets a lot of rain. This area right here will tell you exactly how much. All the way in the west, it's a little darker, mainly because they don't get as much rain. Now, if you look at an entire map of the United States, there would be this giant line that cuts through right about here, right in the middle of this state of Nebraska. Everywhere east on this line is very nice spots to grow food and pretty much everything else. All the west of this line is kind of an area for cattle ranching, herding, and whatnot. Essentially areas that aren't suitable for intensive agriculture. So, not a lot of people live there. A lot of cows live there, but not people. Now, this is a historical map of the state of Nebraska. Why I'm bringing this up? Because I'm about to talk a little bit for Nebraska's history. Now, Nebraska was once an empty piece of land. Not just like mostly empty, but completely empty. Then the Indians kind of spent some time in here, kind of moved in and out. And then the French owned it, did nothing with it. The Spanish owned it, did nothing with it. Then it eventually came into the hands of the Americans, once the Americans bought the Louisiana Purchase. That was kind of a little bit of a tongue twister there, I don't know why. Once there, the Americans did nothing with it for a good chunk of time, and then they were like, hey, this could be some pretty nifty farmland, so they kind of sold it in there and made some farmland, but only in the eastern areas. Now, nothing really much has happened since then to really change Nebraska's geography. People settled all along the Missouri River and the Platte Rivers, kind of making this a little bit of a swoosh shape right here. That is also now the I-80 corridor. And that area, as long as all of these areas are pretty much the only areas that still have people in them. There's nothing really else that's historically significant that would change Nebraska's geography. People settle these areas, people have always settled in these areas, and in the near future, people are still going to settle in these areas. Doesn't really look like much is going to change about it. Now, to further explain another point, I'm going to go onto Wikipedia. First of all, thank Wikipedia. It's honestly one of the best areas to go to for information. Don't listen to anybody that says otherwise. Now, before I really go on to this classic move of going into Wikipedia for a YouTube video, let me explain what I'm doing here. I just want to explain how large Omaha is. Omaha might be the most underrated city when it comes to size, because Omaha is a pretty hunky city. In fact, although I'm scrolling quite a bit here, Omaha is still a relatively large city. Oh, there it is, 40th. Omaha is the 40th largest city in the United States. And it's honestly pretty large, if you really think about it. I mean, it's larger than Miami, Oakland, Minneapolis, Tulsa, Tampa, Wichita, New Orleans, Cleveland, Honolulu. And I could go on and on and on. All those cities I mentioned are smaller in size than the proper city of Omaha. Of course, most of the metropolitan areas are so mostly larger than Omaha. Omaha's metro is nothing to scoff at either. Omaha is in the top 60 largest metros in the United States as well. Just something to consider. And you look at Lincoln. Lincoln is not much farther down here. Also, Lincoln's 70th. And Lincoln is the capital of Nebraska, obviously, and also home to the University of Nebraska, which allows Lincoln to actually be its decent size. These two cities are cities that a lot of people think are much smaller than they actually are. These are decently large cities. A lot of cities are smaller than both Lincoln and Omaha. And the fact is, there's so much people in those two cities. In a state that's only 37 the population, only has a population of just under 2 million, and yet they have these two really large cities. That just goes to show how many people are just truly clustered into the city-state that is essentially Nebraska. All in all, I think I've proven my point of how Nebraska is a lot smaller than you think it is. Maybe even larger in population. There's not a lot of people really think about Nebraska when it comes to its people. But really, this is the area of Nebraska. You got the city of Lincoln. Spreading decently far. And spreading quite a little bit farther is Omaha. Look at that hunky boy. Now, I'm just going to say this one last time. Most of the people in Nebraska live in a very close proximity to these two cities. I mean, yeah, the population of these two cities alone pretty much comprises of almost half of the state. It's 2 million people, which is honestly insane. Just these two cities alone. Nebraska is the city-state of the United States. I mean, I guess I could talk about Alaska, but that's a different time. But the city-state that nobody really thinks about is Nebraska. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this video is a lot better in quality than my previous videos if you watch them. Not that they're bad, you should go on ahead, look at my other videos, and if you like this channel, and you like the direction that it's going in, please like, please subscribe, tell me that you like this content, you want more, engage in the comments if you're like one of the 2.5 people that are still watching at this point. Thank you, and stay crispy.